Welcome back. Is everyone enjoying themselves? Woo. All right, we have the privilege of having some panelists today from the Body Mind Change Experience by David Cronenberg. And this is quite, I had the opportunity to try this myself, and it's an amazing experience, something that I've never experienced in VR before. Very creative and a very interesting backstory because David Cronenberg, right? Of course, he's going to create an amazing story, so it was quite compelling, something like I've never experienced before. And I'm going to start off with a short video. Instead of messing it up myself, I'll let David Cronenberg explain about the body-mind change experience.
Body-Mind Change is an episodic interactive film experience starring David Cronenberg. Blurring the lines between fiction and reality, the story of Body-Mind Change begins with the conceit that David Cronenberg has licensed all intellectual property found in his films to a fictional biotech company called PNC Labs. The narrative ride begins with a call to action from David Cronenberg to his fans, urging them to register for their cause.
Hi, I'm David Cronenberg. I'm very excited to partner with Body Mind Change and contribute to its groundbreaking pod recommendation engine. The promise of pod is nothing less than extraordinary. It represents an unprecedented leap forward in human improvement technology. Through a process called synaptic entanglement, pod's personality integrates with your own. A truly unique life form, pod then transmits its intuitive life recommendations to you at the speed of thought. The result, you'll unearth previously untapped drives and desire, and ignite newfound passions.
Upon registering for their pods at bodymindchange.ca, audience members are then taken through a 3-part episodic narrative made up of a series of short films, interactive explorations, mock psychology tests, Twitter micro-narratives, and gamified elements. Each 20 to 30-minute episode is anchored by a narrator called Kay, an artificial intelligence agent tasked with preparing and designing each user's pod for eventual production. As the episodes unfold, audience members find themselves embroiled in Kay's own story and her own existential crisis. The emotional connection between audience members and Kay is further drawn deeply in the conclusive episode when audience members realize that in order for them to receive their pods, Kay must die. The conclusion of this interactive film is taken one step further. The actions, choices, and answers of audience members in each episode make up the data points needed to produce not only their fictional pod, but also a very real one generated through the use of 3D printing technology. Body Mind Change is the first ever interactive narrative experience that culminates in a 3D printed object. Drawing upon the themes found in Shivers, Videodrome, Crash, Existence, and Spider, Body Mind Change enables audiences to experience what it is like to live inside a Cronenberg film, thus extending the film experience into a participatory one.
Join us as we make history together. Visit the Body Mind Change website. It's your first step in becoming a very special premier host for pod. The best candidates may receive their own pod recommendation engine from Body Mind Change.
Okay, who's ready to receive their pod? My name is Jason Gerald. I'm principal consultant at Next Gen Interactions, and here we have the creative producers and content creators of this body-mind change experience. Up first, we have Anna Serena, who you've had the privilege of listening to already on the previous panel, more on the investment side. And here we get to hear from her more on the creative side. In fact, you may have heard earlier, she's the Chief Digital Officer for the Canada Film Center and also a CFC lab founder. But she's also a producer of this body-mind change experience with the Oculus Rift. And with that, Anna?
Sure. So we needed to play that backgrounder because this is one of those projects where, for whatever reason, scope creep is not an issue. So as you can see, it's a very large-scale project that was actually part of the public exhibition of David Cronenberg's works that was showcased at the Tip Bell Lightbox. So this was something that we launched last year, and since then this exhibition has been touring the world. Body Mind Change, the digital extension, is about to also, we're looking at touring it in different places outside the context of the larger exhibition. As we started to imagine this tour, which as you see includes a physical installation because we have this kind of mock laboratory of pods that we're building with 3D printers, we also started to imagine what it might be like to include a VR extension to the whole thing. So our eventual sort of larger scale VR project related to this installation will be a new way to implant the pod in participants using VR technology. So as part of the larger scale installation, you'll have the pods being printed through 3D printers and also in those stasis bottles, but we'll also have a set of implantation units which will be essentially the VR experiences. So doing this project with us is J. Lee Williams, who was part of the original creative team of this Body Mind Change project, founder of 1188 Films, and now co-founder of Occupy VR. And thankfully and so excitedly, one of his other co-founders is none other than superstar Blair Renault, who created Technolust and has joined our team of Occupy VR. So now we have this like insane VR unit as part of the broader Body Mind Change creative team working on this thing. So that's just a set.
Thank you, Anna. And Anna gave a great background on JB and Blair. And I also just want to add to that JB will be speaking next, and he's actually, has a background in visual effects. He's actually an award-winning visual effects and animation director. In fact, he's worked with several Fortune 500 companies such as Coca-Cola, Nike, and Puma, so the big guys, as well as Bell Media, MTV, Red Bull, and various global artists. Okay.
Working with Anna on the project was about a bit over a year ago. It was difficult trying to get inside of David's head. I spent a lot of time watching the movies. I watched them with no audio. I watched them just listening to them. I spent a lot of time trying to understand the way he directs. It's very different, I find, from a lot of directors. Just trying to do him justice with the work, and I think that we did that, and we pretty good. I think we liked it. And then VR came around, and met Blair and went to Anna, and I said we have to do something. We have to take the pod experience of what we created and just put it into VR because he's been writing about it for 20 years, and he's kind of a bit of an icon in the world of virtual reality even before it was here. It just made sense, and so we got together. We sort of we've been working on it and it's great to have Blair because he has a great technical background in it and a great aesthetic to his design. And I think it's all been coming together. I mean, the extension is outside. You guys can try it. And it's just a bit of a teaser to what we've been doing. We showed it to Tip. We put David inside, and he really enjoyed it, and his son as well. And and now we're just expanding on that world.
Okay. And up next, of course, we have the legend Blair Renaud, many of you know probably from Technolust. And so what's great is we're starting to see these experts that have, their second, third generation of VR experiences that they've created. And so we're seeing just better and better experiences all the time. In fact, Blair is the CEO of Iris VR as well, and he's got a background in video game design, visual effects. He's an artist, he's a sound designer, he's been a mascot, he's sort of done it all. In fact, he's had 19 years of experience working with, for example, Grand Theft Auto, and also games on the Mac, on the PC, and the mobile development, so all different platforms, and now the next platform, the next generation being head-mounted displays and such technologies. Blair?
I think you said it all. that was my life story. I'm right into this VR thing. I love VR, and I'm just trying to make the best VR that I can. And thankfully, these guys came along with an awesome project, and I jumped in it. Literally.
I think you said it great to me once, a couple weeks ago. You're like, you're here because you want to make VR perfection.
Yeah,
I see nothing but that about you. You work like night and day, constantly on trying to progress virtual reality. That's amazing. Very happy to work with you.
It's kind of hard being at the beginning of something, because there are things that I would do differently now, knowing what I know now, right? Like Technolust, for example, being first-person locomotion. I found out that's really hard with some people, and the big guys in charge, like Oculus, don't really like that idea either. But at the same time, I don't think it would have been as successful as a Kickstarter if it were just a seated experience. You're selling to gamers right now mostly. So I had to break a few of the rules, but I'm learning a lot with each new project. It's really exciting.
I'd be interested in hearing about how different, we've had some discussion in other panels, but how some of those lessons that you've learned, how the VR development is different than film development or game development that you guys have also been involved in.
Sure. Well, so the CNC Media Lab has basically been experimenting with storytelling and technology for a very long time, since 1997. So we've played around with, we've developed one of the first user-generated content sites in Canada prior to Flash and social media and all of those things. So we've been at this kind of core of the tension between immersion and interaction. And that's been a battle that's been going on, especially when you're dealing with filmic experiences or cinematic experiences, where you never really know whether it's a good idea to break that immersive experience through interaction, what that looks like. I've made super expensive stuff that, in retrospect, are actually slight failures because we didn't nail that interaction immersion tension. With VR, what's interesting is it's definitely seems more like a constructed environment space, i.e. quasi-gaming space. So adding that cinematic feel to the experience is challenging in a different way, I think. It's not about immersion versus interaction. It's really about how the suspension of disbelief is being handled through the cinematic form that you're putting into the system. And I don't know for some of you, but I find a lot of the 360 3D filmmaking that you just port over into VR doesn't quite work that well. Like, I don't believe that I'm in a space that I feel good in, So we're really trying to figure out, and with these guys, and because they come at the medium from these two spaces, Jay from the cinematic space and Blair decidedly from that kind of gaming environment, we want to create a totally new kind of aesthetic that actually nails that tension between the filmic medium and the gaming and the kind of constructed 3D modeling spaces that seem more native to this environment. And I like what we're doing right now. I like what we're seeing with the teaser. I'm curious to know what you guys feel in terms of when you see it. But I don't know whether you feel the same way as I do in terms of this whole 360 3D film not really cutting it yet.
But it's getting there. I find that actually look at it different. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about, like, from a film standpoint. Everything comes down to commitment. You know, you're hoping for commitment from your end user. With the world that we're working with in VR now, is that we already have to commit as soon as we put their VR on them. So, that being said, we have to kind of work with that commitment in a different way than we have before. And seeing that they're already in there, it's up to us to kind of explore new ideas of how we can present them, the story, or drive that forward, where you can have them interact with it. And I think that it's creating a new thing, and that it may not look, it may not be completely real. It's not flat, but it's something new, and that's what we're exploring. There's a lot of people here that are exploring that too, and we're gonna get it. We'll get it.
And I think what worked well, Blair, that you did, that I liked in terms of the teaser, is that I do think that vignetting some of the sides or not making everything so super photorealistic everywhere is a really good way to try to manage that tension, So one of the things that I think worked, so if you guys don't mind, we'll just, and if you don't mind, Jason, maybe it's okay. Is it okay if we just kind of pick apart our teaser and go, this is what I think worked, and this is what I think didn't work? And then you guys can tell us whether you felt the same way once you see it. How does that sound? Yes? So I think what works is when we were doing that experience and we decided to create the kind of the red forms to signal some kind of volumetric space below, but it wasn't so literal and it was slightly shadowed. So you still get the sense that you're in an otherworldly space, and you can buy into it more. I mean, what were some of the things that you guys were thinking about as you were constructing that environment?
I think easing people into the experience, not putting them on a roller coaster right away, or just blowing up their head as soon as they put it on. I mean, a lot of people that we've experienced or tried to experience are new to VR, and they say it's the first time doing it. Some people don't understand it, especially if they don't know David, but they're kind of some conversations about that. But I think that the whole thing was easing people in, and then really starting to add to that. I think that's what we did.
It's funny, I use those kind of abstract blocks and techniques as well. You get a really amazing sense of scale in VR, and like those blocks are actually gigantic, way up in the air and like way out to the sides, and it just immediately when you put it on, whether or not it looks realistic or not, your brain is tricked into thinking it's real, because that's the only time you get that feeling. It's in the real world, right? Like, oh, that building is huge. It doesn't have to be a building. If you saw those blocks in the sky in the real world, you'd be like, wow, big. It's just like, it kind of evokes like a primal feeling.
Yeah. I totally agree.
As far as my favorite parts of it, I don't know. I like all of it. The paw jumping on your face is fun, but I'm afraid we're going to scare somebody into a heart attack.
Well, that's something that we talk a lot about amongst us, for example, is how much is too much. And so, as the producer, I typically have the more conservative side of things, where I'm like, no blood, don't show me any blood, or not too many jump scares. I'm constantly worried about how audience is going to react to this, because there was a great panel yesterday where John and David spoke a lot about the responsibilities of creators in terms of creating VR, or these new experiences that we have no idea how audiences are going to actually respond physiologically, because each person is actually different physiologically, and we haven't tested yet what these devices are going to do to them, right? What we do know is that there is a visceral response to VR. So, so we need to manage that carefully. So that's something that we talk a lot about in terms of what is enough, what is too much. But it's, go ahead.
Yeah, that's something I've actually put a lot of thought into, and I have sort of like my own best practices for VR written down. Things like, and a lot of people might not agree with me, like, especially during gaming experiences, a lot of the same tropes don't really transfer over, but you don't want to play a game where you're dying constantly. I don't want to die. It's because it's closer to reality than something I'm separated from. There's things I just don't want to be bothered with. I don't want to die. I don't want to worry about ammunition and like things like that. I just want to be in this reality. And yeah, like if you're doing a gaming experience, and like with our Cronenberg, it's a little different, but the player wants to feel powerful and smart and these kinds of things, right? Instead of weak and like dying. Unless we're doing something where you want them to feel like freaked out. But yeah, those things are more important than frustration. You don't want frustration or like sickness. Like these are things you want to avoid.
That's very interesting. That's something in the research community we call a break in present, something that takes you out of the experience. And yeah, dying. Yeah, I just kind of think, oh, yeah, this is a game, I'm dead.
It's the difference between making a game and like a holodeck. I've written that down a lot of times. Like if you watch Star Trek, they have holodeck. No one's going to play Call of Duty with a holodeck. They're going to pretend they're a detective or like Sherlock Holmes on the detective. But you do more like immersive,
exploratory.
Yeah, exploratory and like interesting things. Yeah. You don't want to do dangerous things.
So in terms of what you said about scale, I think in the same way that you want to give a sense of scale, the other thing that I find interesting about VR is that you also want to create a sense of a different time scale. So it's really about slowing things down, not about speeding things up. So so things like texture matter, you know. So, and I think that's why I'm not a big fan of 360 film, because I do, if the person's too close and I see all the pixels on their face, I'm not that keen on it, you know. So because you're spending so much time, you want to spend time looking around. How you design these textures in the space are going to be really important. And that's where, again, you know, working with these guys has been phenomenal, because Jay Lee, with his post-production background, really understands what that means in terms of creating these different types of textures as it merges with some of these 3D visual elements, and try and find that sweet spot. We haven't done it. I don't think we nailed it yet, but we're starting to really try to figure that out.
I think a lot comes down to people trying it and actually coming up and talking to us about what they like about the experience. It's different for everybody, you know. And just going back to what you were saying about slowing things down, what I found fascinating about really studying David's work is that he almost was directing in this style, you know, that I've been thinking about for PR from the beginning. A lot of his shots are slow and drawn out and, you know, unnecessary, kind of, but and it's present in all of his films, and it really makes you want to commit to that, and I find that great, because inside of the world of VR, we need to do that too. We need people to, you know, when they're in there, the first thing they you know, it doesn't matter what you're showing them, it's a room, they love it, they're looking around and they're experiencing that, and so you have to slow things down, you have to let them sort of, their senses take that in, and then commit to being in that world. Once you have them committed, and, then you can kind of show them, and they're happy to see it. I think that's great.
Well, that brings up some. I really like your discussions of like space perception, and you can cheat in film, you can cheat in games with 2D textures and postures and such, and that's difficult. You can't cheat because you see really the truth in virtual reality. Something's truly a 3D object. As an example, are there those? Could you expand on those concepts of the technical? How technically you have to think differently as far as creating the illusion of being in these worlds that's different from game development?
It's strange because a lot of people still haven't figured it out yet. I don't know if people don't perceive scale the same way maybe, but I've gotten into even some like AAA VR games or like works in progress anyway, where the scale is totally wrong. Like people will have, your body will have tiny little hands. And it takes me out of it right away. I'd rather have no body than somebody else's corpse, tiny little hands hanging off of me. It's bizarre. But yeah, there's a lot of technical issues and a lot of things you don't realize until you're in there. Like in all my experiences, I always have like dirt everywhere. Like everything should be dirty. There should be dust floating around in the air because it really just pulls you in without any effort. You're used to seeing like a dust mote floating by out of the corner of your eye, and
a lot of this fascinating. I love the dust.
Yeah, there's a little thing. Show me this whole thing in my brain. It's like cheating to get that presence feeling, right? Another thing I found that is in both of these experiences is video. If you have a screen with video, you're instantly just put in passive, okay, this is the real world mode. I'm so used to staring at a video on a screen that if you watch a video for a second in VR, you forget that you're in VR.
Yeah.
What's the difference between reality and virtual reality at that point?
It's interesting to watch different people do these things because we start with a video of David's head, and some people, right off the bat, they're looking around. But yeah, what you said, people just sit here and they watch TV. So some people, they get in and they're just...
Yeah, they don't get VR. They're so used to consuming the media passively, just staring straight forward.
And we're always behind, just wanting them to leave.
Yeah.
Look over here. Look over here. It's 360, but yeah, it's like we're programmed. And I think we're breaking some of the programming we are.
Yeah, I think if you actually own like a VR headset, it only takes you like to the second try to figure out, the whole part of this is looking around, right?
Yeah, you get it very quickly.
Yeah, and the one thing I would say too is that, given that we can't do gesture yet, or you can if you really wanted to put all the magic leap and nimble sense and all that sort of stuff onto the device, but for this one, it's really around the head tracking, triggering, stuff happening in the scene. And the thing that works really well is actually the video drone room, where you've got all of these, to marry what you just said about video being a crucial part within the VR experience as actually video. It was really nice to create that room where when you turn your head, the different TVs would trigger the playing of the video. And that works really well too. And it allows you to understand, okay, so I have some agency in the space if I turn my head. Again, very, very subtle way to insert notions of interaction, right? So between that tension again of immersion and interaction, prior to head-mounted displays and gesture-based systems, it's too active the way you're actually interacting with things. But there's something really lovely about just turning your head and then knowing that actually provides you with a sense of agency. So, so things like that are actually kind of easy to do and yet quite powerful.
That brings up another technical issue, is drawing the player's attention to things, especially in a more narrative experience like this, where we saw it if we tried the prototype we had yesterday. The one we have today is different. But there were times when you had to do certain things, and it's hard to get the player to do that. Like, I can do a sound from over there with just regular positional audio and hope that that draws their attention to look that way. But without like true 3D positional sound and maybe even a visual cue or a tactile cue, us going like this, it's tricky to get away with. We have to learn new ways, and this goes with film as well, with 360 film. We have to find new ways to draw the player's attention to where we want, which is...
But this is actually a good tip, I think, which is we're lucky because we don't feel like we're finished ever, you know? And so the good tip is it's actually not a bad idea to throw in a bunch of stuff that you know it doesn't quite work, because then you know exactly, like even just going into this exhibition space, if, for example, we know that we have to tap someone every time to sink into those lips, then it's not working. So we need to then, so that we know we need to fix that somehow. So there are ways in which you can constantly be user testing, and sometimes it's actually a good idea to throw in a number of these elements into whatever version you're working on, and then just let a whole bunch of people try it so that you can tell exactly where the issues are. Because it's not that clear sometimes whether or not the elements that you put in there which you think will help draw their attention are actually working.
I just use my wife.
Yeah.
She doesn't get anything. She doesn't play video games at all. So that's what led me to like just pure mouse control with Technolust. And I'll see if she doesn't turn when she's supposed to. I know it's broken.
Yes.
There was a simple thing that we experienced with sound, and that was when we were inside the fly pod. We put a fly in there. The first time we put it, it just kind of showed up, buzzed a second, and landed on the screen. So the hope is that people like, well, crap, I'm inside the fly pod to close. There's a fly here. What's that? You're going to turn into a monster. And it worked, right? It worked a little bit, and then we simply changed it a little bit, and we then put the sound buzzing around your head first, and that changed everything, right? Because then the person started being like, oh, where's this fly? And you couldn't see it, like it's a good what's this sound. And right away, to go like this, and then all of a sudden, and I think that amped up that oh crap moment, like a lot.
It sounds sort of like the lesson here is you have to actually try things, experiment a lot. These thought experiments that we think, oh, this might work, you don't really know until you try it.
So. VR development's all about that. Like we really need a way to work within the editor with the HFD.
Yeah, it's immediate.
I had to start that experience over so many times. I hate it. It's like, but if I could actually while it's playing, I could change things in it. That would be
an easy way
to really helpful
to test.
Yeah, right now it's off on, off on, off on, and with an experience like this that's more passive, you start from the beginning every time.
And that also brings up the point of using lean methods to get it out there to users, not just yourself. Sometimes you can get so close to the problem that you don't necessarily see these things that you just take for granted. So showing at conferences and such, and getting feedback from you guys.
Well, the evolution of this is actually interesting because so we finished our body mind change experience, and then but I knew I wanted to do an Oculus Rift experience. So we were hunting around for a story first. And so we were actually working with another film production company that was doing a horror that was potentially launching during TIFF. And so we were going to do this horror-based Oculus Rift experience, and then that fell through. And we said, well, let's just do it. Let's try something. We have all this material. Let's just do it. So we were not intending on creating any kind of public product at all, but we were just kind of fooling around with the stuff with already existing materials that we had, and then building obviously the new 3D spaces that Blair built. But then when we showed it at a barbecue at the Canadian Film Centre, the reception was so great that we thought, okay, well then maybe this is a product that we should build out into a much bigger thing. So now how does it belong in the larger conceit of the body-mind change experience? And that's when we started to kind of jam on, well, is this a new kind of implantation experience for the pod? How do we turn it into that kind of experience? And that's how it has grown into becoming this larger thing. But it was really born out of just pure fun and play.
It's nice to develop in VR, kind of in a more immersive environment like this. My business partner is always asking me to show him like what's written. Like I want the whole story laid out in front of him. And I find it doesn't work as well that way. And it's the same with the Cronenberg experience. You build this environment out of it, and you're sitting in this room and you're like, dang, you know what would be awesome right now is if that was like the pod from The Fly, and I had a fly buzzing around the room, and you go with the flow. It's like you have godlike power through all of it. You can, once you're in this environment, you can choose what's going to be there, as opposed to writing it out ahead of time. It might not work as well.
It changed a lot. I mean, like, now you actually, the chair turns backwards and you go into the fly pod, but originally it didn't. I mean, you were just witnessing, you were witnessing this experience where the pod goes and the other pod jumps at your face, and then because you put that wasn't flying there for no other reason, I didn't, we didn't.
And Cronenberg like the fly.
Oh yeah, that was the like the fly. Yeah, just by Blair putting that little buzzy fly in the room, it spawned the idea to let's turn the chair, let's put it back, and we'll put that fly in that pod, and because it's so based off the movie.
That's how things work out.
So it's organic. It's very organic.
I think that's another issue that AAA studios will have making content at the beginning. They'll plan everything out and they'll have the structure, and things won't work along the way, and they'll be stuck with it. So it's more organic workflow.
And this is why the Film Center actually does a lot of stuff like this, because at the end of the day, it's not just about what are the new types of storytelling experiences with this new technology, but what are the new processes, creative processes that you need to start to understand. And having, made a bunch of stuff, like one of the big things we did was a large-scale interactive feature film. This was during DVD-ROM days. 3 directors. That was a highly structuralist type of approach where we were quite, there were open spaces where we could play around with stuff, but we needed to sort of, in these kinds of, what do you call them, multi-layered, sort of slightly choose your own invention narratives, you have to pre-plan for a lot of that stuff. While as you think that given the fact that this is also a quasi-interactive experience, you follow the same model, it's actually a very different model because all of a sudden you're telling a story in space, and that's something that's actually quite a bit different. So allowing for spatial processes to, I'm calling it that, but I don't know what else to call it, but it's like, how do you account for understanding that particular, the creative process of figuring out the narrative within a particular space, and how do you critique that in real time, and what does that look like as a team? Those are things that, as these guys are doing it, I'm taking into what we're doing at the Film Center and thinking about how to start imagining a new type of workflow. And then what are the technologies that we need to be able to do that? So for example, there's Phase 1, which is like, it'd be great to be able to edit in real time and see this stuff in real time, So similarly, it would be great to start to imagine a script looking differently, or not a script, but an experience map, let's say, looking differently when you're talking about spatial storytelling, and how do you share that information with your other collaborators?
Could you guys talk a little bit about how the 3D printing of the pods plays into this?
Sure. So, in the beginning, the way it works is you sign up to be one of the beta testers for this new pod that David purportedly has financed through this other company. And so you're given a password, and you start to actually play this experience, if you will. And within the experience, there are a number of different tests. Essentially, they're psychological tests, but they're rendered differently and quite visually. And each user has an ID that is in the back end, and then depending on how they answer it, it's tabulated as part of the database. And so we worked really hard with another 1188 creator, Matt Milowitz, who's a phenomenal designer. And we worked really hard on trying to figure out what all the different variables are mapped onto the 3D object. So the pod, if you saw the picture, that pinky thing, actually has a tail, it sort of has a bit of a butterfly thing, it has tentacle, it has what do you call those things? Antennas. And so depending on your set of variables, the wings get a bit chubbier, or the tail gets a bit longer. There's a color thing. So we had, I don't know, like a 1,000 different combination of things. And the 3D printer, then we worked with Esthetech, another company who managed the 3D printing process, took all those designs and then put it into the 3D printer just as a set of variables of what to print, and then it would print it. So that was actually a really good, that was very, I'll tell you something I haven't told anyone yet. So we had to change that process. So in the beginning we were doing that, but then it got so popular, like everyone wanted a pod. We actually anticipated that we would only print a certain number of pods, but then it was like triple the amount. And so at some point during the entire event, the experience, which was a prolongated event, we had to then simplify the whole thing so that only a certain number of pods could be created for the number of users that we had, because it was a bit too customized. Yeah, we're breaking 3D.
I love how you're bringing different technologies together and having the full experience. So it's not just about going into the brick, but the entire real world experience and 3D printed experience that goes along with that. That's pretty cool. That helps create the story, and that story helps create the brick experience.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wouldn't be the same if you just not sure what to expect and put it on and see things work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it was such a natural to do. It would have been really dumb of us not to do a lived experience with this project.
Well, you guys did a great job of answering my questions. In fact, some of them I didn't even have to ask. I have a list here. So, well,
You want to talk to me?
they handled it. Well, I'd like to take, if we have a couple of questions maybe from the audience, we have a few minutes. Yes?
So, I gave you guys a bunch of feedback yesterday. Everyone should go try this VR experience. It's arguably the best thing here. And I was very interested to get your guys' opinion on the concept of story. It's actually, went through the experience yesterday and really loved it. And I was giving some feedback from Jay, and I was like, oh, I really like the story and things like that. Now that I'm considering it, I actually don't know if that's true, right? Because it's really great experiences and great moments in great areas, but it's not a great story. You know?
No,
you know what I'm saying?
You're right.
It's those moments where they're great, the rooms are great, everything like that, but from that perspective, I come from games and we do a lot of iterative design, which is what I think you're talking about just going with the flow and saying, oh, what about this? Let's try to fly, let's do that. That's very game, but it's spatial. So, are you thinking about, as you build out this experience, are you thinking about injecting more of a story into it, or are you still thinking more visual experience?
I think that, as Anna mentioned earlier, we just created this on, we had this, CC barbecue, and we had a project kind of felt good, and we were just really itching to do something, and we kind of went there. And when everyone is experienced over here with our thing, it's just a teaser.
Yeah.
So it actually doesn't really have much story to it, but that being said, based on a lot of feedback, and thanks so much for bringing that up, based a lot on feedback and everything, we're really starting to understand the ways to tell a story. We didn't want to sit down and create a story and then boom, shove it in your face. Because the way I've been thinking about how to tell stories for this is, a lot of time when you're doing film, you're doing it for yourself. You're doing your own story and you're presenting it. But here we have to think about the user, and we have to, invite everything that we're experiencing with the different types of reactions we're getting, and base the story on that. So what you're getting out there is a teaser, and it is fun, and it's good that you came out of it, and I love the fact you actually thought about it further. The story element to that is coming, and that's going to lie on me. So.
And the thing that we're actually thinking about is that it is not a full story. So that's why we talk about things like it needs to be seen within the context of what was before, what installation it's going to be part of. We haven't confirmed this, but these are some of the conversations, is that it could very well literally be the implantation moment, which is the end of the story, okay? And so, but you need to go through all of the other things in order to be able to then, and if you do, believe me, because we know what happened to the hardcore users of body mind change, and in fact, Jay he's been a part of the whole thing. So what we did prior to the Rift experience is we had an ARG, an alternate reality game, as part of the experience too. And we had about 20 people who were part of this ARG, and they were very, very, very active. And we had one person in the UK who just managed the ARG. And so he would email them as though he were K and all that sort of stuff. And so we said, well, we gotta reward these guys with something. And so we created a mock implantation event for them, where they were given an email, they were invited to come to a lab, we were all wearing lab coats, we all had like this whole thing, and we had this whole setup, and they had no idea what was happening. Like one person was like, you're not putting that in me, you're not putting that in me, you can't put it in there. And so like it was crazy. And so we had this like pretend scalpels, etc. And then we put them in and cold stuff, and then we videotaped the whole thing, and then we released it to them, and we released it on Twitter. So we know that end, the need to feel like God's been implanted in you, is a critical part of the body-mind change experience. So this could very well be how we deliver that for a larger number of the users. But we don't know yet. We're still in conversations about that.
Going back to story, there's a simple map in storytelling, and that's an art, right? And the end result of the final product, what we will deliver, whether it starts and finishes, there will be an art. I will be importing that from my knowledge of storytelling into the final version right now.
I don't think it's important. I don't think the story is important. Not as important as people think. Like you said, it's more about experiences and moments, right? And what you guys just described, even like with the alternate reality experience, it's an experience. It's not a story. And I think if you leave it vague as well, and put people in just a cool environment with things that they think should have a good explanation, they'll build their own story in their head, right? And if you ran somebody through that in like a clinical setting and then asked them what the story was, you probably get like 100 different answers. Some of them might be better than what we've come up with. So I think that's fine, though. There's been studies into gaming that have said the same thing, right? Like first of all, only 15% of users finish the game. But then you ask these 15%, well, what was the story about? And they'll be like, oh, I remember this one part, this crazy thing happened. Like, they'll remember a moment that's awesome. And it might be part of the overall story arc, but it doesn't matter. And like, I hate to like reiterate that final storytelling.
But like I said, the simple part is just the art. I believe that I do believe that is important. Whether it's constructing a full story or leaving something left, it has to. There's a flow to it. Right? There's a flow to life, and that has to be present. Every day we have a story. It starts and finishes.
Yeah, I just don't think that's a story in the traditional sense. Right? That's like an arc of a good experience.
Yeah.
That reminds me, we used to do studies studying the effects of height, fear of heights. It was just a hole in the floor, and people would come out of there telling their friends, yeah, there's a pit of fire, we had to jump across, just all this crazy stuff. It's insane. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I highly recommend to go try the experience for yourself. You just can't describe, as you all know, VR in words or even from a video. You have to really try it yourself. So they're on the far side of the room, and of course try the other exhibits and demos as well. And I'm sure the panelists would love to speak afterwards as well. Let's give our panelists a hand.